It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends and ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to jump in that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. We're going to go through TD SYNNEX second quarter FY 2024. Folks, TD SYNNEX, the world's largest distributor. TD SYNNEX, by the way, just had a CEO replacement. We'll talk about that on their third quarter. We'll see how the new replacement does. But folks, today what I want to talk about is TD SYNNEX's numbers. And I also want to share some thoughts on how I believe TD SYNNEX could definitely change the game in the marketplace. I've talked about some of this before, but I want to try to bring it home a little closer. Because those MSP friends of mine, those friends of mine in the print channel that are becoming MSPs, TD SYNNEX wants to control the narrative. TD SYNNEX is the world's largest distributor. They deal with thousands of resellers all over the world, tens of thousands of resellers all over the world. And TD SYNNEX, they want to control the technology deliverable to end users. Why wouldn't they? They're the largest distributor in the world. TD SYNNEX can do arrangements with ISV providers that could blow resellers' minds. They're already doing some of those, but they're going to do a lot more of those. For a long time, I've been screaming at my friends that sell IT services. You can't run around and sell $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month service contracts because one day somebody else is going to do that a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient. So I ask all my MSP's friends this question. What's your real value to the end users you service and support? You have to move upstream. You got to be able to sell your intellect. You got to be able to bring more value to those customers. You cannot live in a commodity-based IT world as a service provider. If you try to continue to do that, you are going to get circumvented by innovation and other players that are coming to take away your customer by giving them a better experience. And you can have the greatest relationships in the world, folks. It won't matter when the better experience comes. I believe that TD SYNNEX is trying to build those better experiences. I do have some concerns with TD SYNNEX regarding their operating margin. I think it's way too damn low. Their EBITDA is way too damn low. TD SYNNEX has had some declining revenue. I think that's kind of interesting because it's the first time they've had declining revenue in quite a while. So without any further ado, let's jump on the board. I'll share what I put together for you. Top line revenue for the 6 months was $27,923 million. Their non-GAAP gross billings were $38,571 million for the first 6 months of FY 2024. When you look at their revenue, they're down 5% from where they were in 2023. That's kind of important, and I'll share the importance of that in a second. Operating profit, 2%. 2% operating profit margin, $567 million on the revenue of $27.9 billion. But ladies and gentlemen, the decline in revenue is on top of the worst decline that TD SYNNEX had since 2010. And I talked about this when I shared their first quarter numbers. If you factor in the merger revenue, if you take TD or Tech Data and SYNNEX and you put that revenue together, you got to go back to 2010 to find a year where they didn't grow revenue year over year. And going from 2022 to 2023, they had an 8% decline. And here we are in FY 2024, halfway through, we're 5% decline of 23's number. TD SYNNEX revenue is declining. We all know why. Because more and more of the IT deliverable is becoming commoditized. That's just the reality. There's a lot of competition out there driving down prices. But at the end of the day, I believe that TD SYNNEX has to focus more on their profitability because they don't have enough room for some major challenges that could come. Just my thinking. I want to talk about this non-GAAP revenue. You know, TD SYNNEX, they talk about non-GAAP gross billings. Non-GAAP gross billings for 6 months, $38,571 million. The revenue was $27,923 million. Folks, that's $10,648 million. That's basically pass-through dollars. Let me read this to you. Use of non-GAAP financial information. TD SYNNEX uses non-GAAP gross billings, which adjusts revenues to exclude costs related to sales of third-party supplier service contracts, software as a service arrangement, and certain fulfillment contracts. Non-GAAP gross billings are useful. Non-GAAP metric in understanding the volume of our business activity and serve as an important performance metric in internally managing our operations. What they're telling you all there is they had gross billings of $38,571,000,000 for the first 6 months of FY 2024, but basically $10,648,000,000 of that was kind of passed through dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a big number, and it's something to pay attention to. Let's look at their cost of revenue. TD SYNNEX runs on a 7% gross profit. Their cost of revenue is 93%. That's just crazy high. It's crazy high. They have to figure out how they can bring more value to the resellers and the end users so they can raise the prices. They got to increase their profitability. Their selling and general administrative expenses are 5%, leaving them to 2%. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an extremely high cost of revenue. Let's look at their asset liability. Asset to equity ratio, 28.88%. 71% of their assets are encumbered. Their goodwill is $3,900,000,000. It's 14% of their assets. That should really be less than 10. You know, you don't want to have goodwill really more than 10% of your assets. And I would say this, that there's folks in the industry, especially that print industry, those friends of mine that have way out of whack here. But at the end of the day, they got $27.7 billion in assets. Their liabilities are $19.7 billion. Their equity is about $8 billion. And goodwill is $3.9 billion. Let's look at their EBITDA. 6 months revenues, $27,923,000,000 with a 3% adjusted EBITDA. It's too damn low. Cash, free cash flow is decreasing. Ladies and gentlemen, let me turn the pen on here because I think this is a pretty big deal. But, you know, if you go back to the 3 months ending in May of 2024, free cash flow was a negative $152.5 million. $152.5 million. If you look at May 31st, 6 months ending in FY 2023, they were positive $537.1 million. So what's going on with the free cash flow? If you look at their net debt, May 31st of 2024, the number's right here, ladies and gentlemen, $3,442,000,000. It's going up. Their net debt is increasing, their free cash flow is decreasing, and their operating margin percentage is just too damn low, in my opinion. I wanted to do the breakout. You know, they have their little pie chart. Here's where all our revenue comes from. I put the revenue together for the first quarter and the second quarter. And folks, in red is the total for the 6 months based on the buckets. And I just want to share some thoughts because I think this is very, very important, okay? When you look at software as part of the bucket, 19%. It's 19% of the revenue. $5,589,000,000. Service and storage, $5,724,000,000. PCs, $5,166,000,000. Networking, $4,328,000,000. But folks, this services business, 19%. It was 21% of the pie chart in their first quarter. So you can see we're talking 20% of their revenues coming from software. And TD SYNNEX is a logistics distribution company. Warehouses, distribution. And now they're moving into software. They're moving into services, networking. Folks, at the end of the day, you're going to see that software piece, I believe, grow. And as that software piece grows, then TD SYNNEX has to figure out how to get that software to those end users at a lower cost. And when they start to really figure that out, when they start to imagine how they're going to do that, well, guess what? It will definitely impact the current situation they have with resellers. You know, TD SYNNEX, they have their technology and product solutions. They list them all out here. I took the numbers off the pie chart, applied them here for their endpoint solutions and their advanced solutions. And some of the numbers are missing off the pie chart. I wish TD SYNNEX would be more accurate with that, share all these numbers. If you look at the other for endpoint solutions, they only show other in one category. They don't show it in two like they do here. We have other in advanced solutions. We have other in endpoint solutions. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, TD SYNNEX is getting a lot of revenue for things that have nothing to do with selling a product. And that is going to cause them to make some changes. Think about some of these changes. And I shared this slide before. You know, they're partners they have. And we can see all the logos of their partners. But let me ask you all this. When will we see new partners? Verizon Business, AT&T Business, ServiceNow. Folks, I believe we're going to see these types of partners engaging with distribution houses, especially the largest one in the world. Could you imagine what Verizon Business could do with TD SYNNEX? Could you imagine the threat that would be to resellers? Especially those resellers that are at the low end of the customer, right? They're doing the low end customers. They're happy as hell to run around and sell $1,000 or $2,000 a month service contracts. Verizon Business gets together with TD SYNNEX. Oh my gosh, they changed the world. AT&T Business gets together with TD SYNNEX. They changed the world. ServiceNow. I believe that TD SYNNEX's goal is to control the contract from birth to death. If TD SYNNEX can control the end user's contract from birth to death, guess what? That puts them in charge of the reseller. Instead of the resellers calling up TD SYNNEX to buy products, TD SYNNEX calling up the resellers to maybe do some services on the products that TD SYNNEX sells. Folks, there's going to be some changes, and you better start using your imagination. Well positioned to benefit from industry evolution. I've talked about this before. They're trying to build an ecosystem orchestration. They don't want to be just this warehouse that sells OEM's products to resellers. They want to figure out how to aggregate solutions, how to build an ecosystem that they are the conductor of. Ladies and gentlemen, how long till major distributors like TD SYNNEX don't need local IT companies to act as resellers to end users? You all better start thinking about that. All IT services resellers have to ask themselves a question. And it's a tough question. You have to ask it and you have to answer it. How valuable are you to your end users you service and support? How valuable are you to those end users you service and support? And folks, don't overestimate your value. Don't be over optimistic in what you think you deliver those end users. Start thinking about ways that you could be circumvented. Get with your team, have a meeting, and talk about how you could be circumvented by a major distributor that formed alliances that could deliver better experiences to your end users. And if you're just selling commodity-based customers that don't really care, they just want the cheapest thing out there, you're running into customers, you're not charging them a fee-based assessment, you're in a vendor auction with them for technology services, guess what? Those customers, they won't need you very shortly. A lot of things to think about in this episode, but one thing's for sure. Status quo is the killer of all that will be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.